Today, I have a very special guest with me. She is an actor, producer, and writer. Her credits include productions like The Maid's Room, Harold and Kumar series, Clock Stoppers, CSI Miami, Warehouse 13, Major Crimes, and On My Block. Fans of The Shield will recognize her as Officer Tina Hanlon on The Shield. Paula Garcés joins me on The Shattered Shield today. How you doing, Paula?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be doing this.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So we're just actually getting into season 5 with our podcast, which is where you are introduced into the show. And I always have my first question for every guest is their origin story, like how you got involved with the Shield, how you heard about it. So how did you initially hear of the project, and how'd you get involved?
I bullied my way into the Shield. Actually, no one was looking for Paula Garces back then. No, it's actually a very true story. I loved the Shield just like everyone else. So I found out about the Shield because I was watching it on FX like everyone else, and
Really?
I was totally obsessed. I was a complete fan, worse than your average fan, because then I became obsessed with getting on the show because I was an actor. So I
Yeah.
wasn't just a regular fan watching it and going, "Oh my God, it was such a cool show." Like I was just like obsessed. I was like, how is there LAPD and there's not one Latina on the show that's
Yeah.
LAPD? It's like it was just crazy to me, and it just didn't ring true, although everything else was amazing. So it became my mission to get on the show. But Sean was not looking for me. None of the producers back then were looking for me. I basically asked my agents and my managers at the time if I can get an audition or a meeting, and I told them that if I did, I knew that I would get on the show somehow, somewhere. And no one believed in me, not even my reps. My reps, who were actually fans of the Shield at the time, they were like, "Oh, you are not their type. You are not their type of actor. You're
Interesting.
too pretty. You're too whatever they were telling me at the time, whatever bullshit they were." I'm sorry, I don't know if can I curse?
Yeah. We just had Kurt Sutter on, and he went crazy. So
Oh, he went. Oh, okay, so I'm like a mild
yeah,
version of
yeah,
Kurt Sutter. Actually, so anyway, no one cared. But there happened to be like a guest star coming up, where because Catherine Dent was pregnant at the time, and they were thinking that maybe they needed someone female that could like cover her for like two
sure.
episodes, right? And so that's the audition I got. And it was kind of like a mercy audition, like, here you go, audition, but no one was really going to pay attention to me. And actually, the
Right.
day of the audition, the casting director said I was completely wrong. She made me go into the bathroom and wash all my makeup off, put my hair up in a
Oh,
bun. I had to go outside and get my husband's button-down black shirt that he had on. I left him like shirtless outside, and I came back in, and she was like, "All
that's
right,
great.
now you can go in and read for like the producers." And when I went inside, it was basically, I want to say about 6 men. It was Sean
Yeah.
Ryan, it was Kurt Sutter, Chegekli, I want to say Scott Brazil. I'm not sure. There was like maybe 2 other writers, but I'm not remembering too much because I was so
Yeah.
nervous. And I think what I proceeded to do, which an actor should never do, is I started to sell why I should be on the show. And so my whole sale was that how could there be LAPD and not a Latina on the LAPD? It would be more interesting if it was a Latina like me, petite, who was kind of like on the pretty side, that no one basically believed in her, just like how I know that they don't really
Yeah.
believe I should be on the show. And then as the more I started talking, the more I started getting really pissed about it, like in real life. And I think that's how I did my audition, like what they had actually written for the character. And
Yeah.
lo and behold, they had me in there for like almost an hour, and they made me do a couple of scenes. And like I remember like sitting on the floor, and I remember kind of like faux fighting. I don't know, like it was just like the craziest audition ever. I remember
Yeah.
leaving the audition going like, I completely fucked that up. That was horrible. I did everything that an actor is not supposed to do. I told the creator writers of the show why their show is not that is like that their show is cool, but it would be cooler if they did it like this, you know?
Yeah,
and
that's
most
great.
of the time their faces were completely baffled, and they were looking at me like I was crazy, but I guess I was their type of crazy. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I think my pitch worked, because that's basically what Tina Hanlon became. Like, she became
Yeah.
sort of like the cop that's too pretty to be on the force, that would, basically mess up the whole time, and would give like a lot for her partner to say. And but I like that they made her human like that. I like that they made her with faults and young and naive, and it was kind of like a little bit of a mirror image of how I was at the time. And I was
Right.
so excited. And so that's how I got on the show. I was only supposed to be on the show 2 episodes, but by the middle of the first episode, they asked me if I wanted to join the Shield Familia. And so I said yes.
I have a question that was later on. I was going to ask later on, but I can ask it now. It's about Tina's storylines, which you kind of answered. I wanted to get your take on how realistic you felt they were, because when she first comes in, like you said, it's based off of naivete, and then there's Billings, the Captain Billings, putting the nanny cam in the locker room, and they had like a hookup with Hyatt. So do you feel like maybe the pitch that you gave them helped create that character that you developed, or do you feel like it was something?
I know it did, because later on, the way, and this is a credit to like everyone from Scott Brazil, Kurt Sutter, Sean Ryan. And I know that, this is probably going to get me in trouble, but I know that Kurt Sutter kind of has like this rep that he's like this very like closed off, hard writer, producer,
Sure.
creator, who like, it's what he says goes all the time. But that was not my impression, or like any of the time that when I worked with Sutter, that was not like what I experienced with him.
Sure.
He was very open to ideas and to play with, and the Shield was such a special time. Like, Sean Ryan made it such a safe place for me to work in. I mean, it was very intimidating, right? Like, even at the time, I mean, I was very young at the time, but even at the time, I was very aware that I was coming into a very male dominant show, from like the storylines to like the workplace. There weren't a lot of women on set, and there weren't a lot of women behind the cameras or behind the scenes. And I felt completely safe at all times. And that's really a testament to FX and all the producers and all the writers. And again, they made me feel so good that I, like, a lot of the times I really opened my big mouth when I shouldn't have, like, and I would give ideas, and I did grow up in Spanish Harlem, so I felt like I had street cred, and like I could like kind of tell them what like the street is really like. And a lot of the times they listened to me, and I really liked the fact that they didn't run away from the fact that she was pretty, like she was a pretty character. Because I think it would have been really stupid, because everything they did was based on some real story, or some real thing that happened to maybe one of the writers or the producers had thought about, or something they read on the newspaper or whatever. And so like everything was kind of based on this like hyper reality at the time. And so for them to ignore Tina Hanlon's looks, I think it would have been really stupid. Like, I think the audience would have been like, but she's hot. Like, like, why wouldn't they use that? Like, and I didn't feel in any way that was disingenuous, or that didn't give it some extra oomph, because I mean that was who I was at the time. For a lack of a better word, I was like the opposite of butch, right? I was not a butchy woman at all at the time, and it would have been very hard for me to play something like that. So I think because I was the opposite of that, the set was reacting to me in a very different way, and it seemed like a fresh thing for the writers to write about
Sure.
and producers to look at. So it wasn't just the fact that of my looks, it wasn't just the fact of because I was a woman. I think it was also my attitude. I was very like naive and very excited, and I think in the middle of like such a grim storyline and such a such a guy's guy type of show, it was kind of like this like, you know, pink dot in like this black cloud, and there and it kind of like it did a chain reaction, and I loved it. I loved the attention. I loved the fact that they thought whatever I said was smart or fresh, and it was a cool thing. I had never experienced something like that on any other show that I was on, and it was so cool that I was actually invited into like the writers' room, and they would actually ask me things about like my background and where I really came from, and how I would talk, how I would move, what I would do in this type of situation. So I had never experienced like a writer's room consultation the way I experienced it on The Shield, and so that to me was what was very cool, is the fact that it wasn't even something they thought of. It was something that was like, because I was there and it seemed to be working, they started writing for me. And that's very exciting to an actor. And it's actually a huge ego boost, as you can imagine, especially for someone, again, I was very young. And I fought my way into The Shield, and yes, I thought that I belonged there, but really I was just like, holy shit, I can't believe I fucking pulled that off. I can't believe they like believed my bullshit. Cool. Like, I can't believe they believe my bullshit. So it's basically like, you know, it was bullshit feeding other bullshit. And then, you know, but I mean, again, I thank all the writers, and especially people like a Kurt Sutter and Sean Ryan, because they reacted well to what other people thought they wouldn't even pay attention to. Because even my managers and agents were like, "Oh no, they never go for people like you," and that pissed me off even more. I was just like, "What do you mean people like me? I'm an actor. I could do whatever, you know." Because all actors, we all think we can do whatever. Like, we all think we can play all ages, all ethnicities, all, you know, just give us a role. We'll do it, you know. That's a long ass story for your question, but it's a true one. I started out as a fan. I was a fan. I was a fan of the show. I was like, holy shit, I love that show, The Shield, and I have to be on it.
So now that you're on it, right, they give you the job. What was it like going into that set now that you have that position? And how were you getting your feedback? Like, how were you hearing about your character in the show back in those times? Like, because we didn't have Twitter, there wasn't any, you know, social media to speak of. Like, how were you getting your reviews on like how people were taking your character once you joined?
The way that I knew that people were receiving the show the way I had experienced the show and the way I was like a fan of the show was basically on the street. Like, you know, wherever I was on the street, on a restaurant or out and about, people would stop me constantly, all the time. And that's when I knew like it wasn't like fame or anything like that. It was just like people were genuinely invested in the storyline and and some people thought I was great, and some people thought I was awful. I got a lot of people that thought I was awful, and they would tell me, you know, like, you don't belong on that show, and you know, I don't get it. I don't get your character. But then I would also get the same amount of enthusiasm, but with love. Like, oh, I love your character, and oh my God, I love what you're doing with Butch, and da da da. You know, so like I experienced it pretty much like in real time, like real life. Like, people would come up to me and be totally invested and tell me what they felt. Like, really. Yeah. And I never took offense to it, and I was never like pissed or like never, because that's how I was, because that's how I was reacting to the show. So So I was excited either way that people thought it was cool, or even if people didn't think it was cool, at least they were watching me. At least they
Right,
knew who
right.
I
At least they're
was.
talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw the reunion special that you guys did on the Blu-ray, and you
Yeah.
do like a little roundtable deal where you talk about what everybody's favorite episode was, and you specifically mentioned Jailbait, which is what we're attaching this audio to after we review that episode. So, what about that episode, if you can remember? I don't know how long it's been since you've seen it, but what about it did you like? What popped about that episode for you?
I felt like I was part of the strike team. Like the whole time I was like, guys, hello. Like, how come you're not using all of this as my hand goes from my head all the way down to my toes? And I was always like, why don't you take me out of this uniform more often? Like, I am doing my push-ups. I'm trying to keep it tight. I mean, that's how I used to talk to them. Completely inappropriate. I will not do it on a set nowadays. And believe me, they weren't me tooing me. It was like me tooing them.
Yeah.
I was very young. I was very excited, and I spoke my mind, and very honestly, and I loved how uncomfortable they were with me when it came to like sex scenes and stuff, because they all were kind of like big brothers to me. That's how the dynamic was. Like Michael Chiklis, he was like a big brother, and like all the guys, Walton, they all kind of interacted with me as big brothers. So every time I would either come in with something revealing or whatever, they were like, "Oh no, put your uniform on." Like it was just like, it was a bit much for them. And so when I would talk to them, I loved making them feel uncomfortable. So I may have been inappropriate at times, but they were all very lovely people to me. And it was amazing. So when I read it, I was like, oh my God, they've been listening to my shit between scenes. Because in between takes, you're still mic'd. And that's basically when you can whisper like your wishes on the show. And I remember like in between takes when I would be like standing somewhere in the corner with like some piece of paper or something, like in the background in my uniform, I'd be like, oh, this is such a waste. I could be totally like in some like whorish outfit trying to take down some like whatever gangster. And I would like whisper stuff like that. And I guess when Jailbait came around, that's when my wishes came true. And sometimes they would be nightmares because they would be laughing at the things that they made me do.
Yeah.
Like, you wished for this, and so, but Jailbait was, again, one of those things where I was like, oh my God, I can be part of the strike team. I can interact with Michael Chiklis and Kenny, and I can, I can joke around with Walton, and it was just, that was like kind of like what I wanted to do ultimately. So I'm so happy that they gave me that.
I asked Nikki Michaud the same question because I think it's pertinent anytime that you link any character with the strike team. I like what Nikki did with Trish when she went undercover in Fire in the Hole, and then what you do in Jailbait. It would have been an interesting dynamic to have a female member of the team and somebody who could do something that they couldn't and get into avenues that they couldn't. But anytime that you, again, link somebody with this team, the topic of corruption comes up. Would you have liked to seen her become more of a corrupt character?
I'm not sure if that would have been realistic for her character, which is the reason why I think they never did that. But I mean, sure, I would have loved to explore Tina being corrupt, but I think it would have been more like a deep, grave mistake that somehow roped her into doing these things with the strike team. Yeah. I don't think it would have been something where her soul ultimately was like corrupt. I think she very much wanted to be like a righteous cop, and I think Tina was very driven and she wanted to be a really good cop, which is the reason why she kind of like always fucked up, and it hurt her so bad that she would fuck up. Yeah. So I think if she did get involved with the strike team and if she did become like a corrupt cop for a little while, I think it would have been because of, like, again, some really horrible mistake that she made, and it kind of like it was a thing that she like had to do and had no choice.
Yeah.
I think that's what it would have been like.
Your actual, I think the first scene in the episode in Jailbait, you come up on this guy who is basically in the middle of a rape and has died on top of this woman. That's the first scene that we see Tina in Jailbait with. That kind of stuff you really don't see that much of anymore. And I think even back then it was very Shield specific to see those kind of visuals. That's what like burns that show in my mind in some part, is you would see scenes like that, or somebody in a trunk burned to pieces and then they open their eyes. What is a scene for you that you filmed that you remember specifically because of its content or grit?
I mean, something that comes to mind, this is how naive I was at the time. I had no idea what a glory hole was at the time. And I remember reading an episode where I had to, like, discover one. And I remember I discovered, like, a severed penis. And I was like, but I don't understand this. What is a glory hole? And they thought I was joking. Everyone was laughing. And I was talking to a specific writer that was very, like, close at the time. I had absolutely no idea what a glory hole was. So of course I read the script for that particular episode, and I just I didn't understand my intention, and I didn't understand it, and I was just like, what the hell is a glory hole? And every single time they said it, it was just like absolute laughter, and I was just like, what am I saying? It was like that type of thing.
That's a multi-episode arc, I believe.
Yeah. And so of course Sean and like two of the writers like pulled me to the side, and they were like, "Oh my God, always with you, always you." And I'm like, because you guys like to put the cute cop to beat up somebody or find a severed penis or whatever it is. Yeah. So now you got to educate me. and so they did, and I was like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I can see that conversation.
They loved every second of it. While we were filming it, it was nothing but laughter, and they made a lot of fun of me. There was a lot of jokes, which I appreciated. I was laughing too, but it was extremely funny. That's one of the episodes where I was just like, I had no idea that existed. Really?
Yeah.
So that kind of memory sticks in my mind. But yeah, I mean, The Shield was definitely, I think, a show that was provocative and was pushing the envelope. But it wasn't just to do that. Like, it wasn't.
Sure.
It wasn't like on purpose for them to do that. Like I said, I think their main mission, as far as the creators and the writers go, was to stay true to reality. Like, if you're gonna if you're gonna do a story about a corrupt cop, this is what he was doing, and this is what was happening, and this is what he would see. This is what you would see on a daily basis if you worked at a precinct where all of this crime was going on, and that dealt with these type of people. And so, like, I commend them for, I'm sure they got in trouble a lot, for showing things that were so graphic or whatever. But unfortunately, it's reality when it comes to that topic,
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of people appreciated the show as well. That actual subplot with the rat trap was Tina's first dabbling into like detective work.
Yeah.
And you pair it up with Dutch Wagenbach,
who I love. I loved working with him so much on the show, and like just a behind the scenes tidbit about him. He is such a lovely person and so funny and really charming, and very sure of himself. So
Yeah.
like the opposite of what you would think he is. And so he's such a great actor. I really appreciated working with him because I learned a lot working with him, and how precise he was with his character, and
Yeah.
his dynamic with CCH founder. I really loved, and so it was something that was a real treat for me.
They have like this low tone idea, or at least it's planted in your mind that there might have been some sort of relationship that could have happened between those two characters. The way you played it, do you think Tina was interested in Dutch? Do you think that
Yes,
might have been something that would have really?
I
Okay.
I personally was
Yeah.
trying to fight. So I get, so I get a set of pages and words, and I see that my scenes are with Dutch, and I'm like, oh my God, this would be such an interesting idea if like the geek gets the pretty girl, like
Yeah.
again, it was again my kind of like, at the time, it was my very naive way of like being rebellious, right? Like I
Sure.
got on I got on a show where I wasn't supposed to be on that show, basically, or my type wasn't supposed to be on the show. And so and then I get on the show and I start asking for me to be involved in like the really grim and dirty things on the show. Like when
Mm-hmm.
when the grimiest crimes happen, when the grimiest people appear, I wanted to be part of that storyline, and I would give hints that I wanted to do that, because I thought it would be, again, interesting to see like the most naivest, cutest, prettiest cop be involved in the craziest, nastiest things. And I thought that would be interesting. And then
Yeah.
again, when this opportunity with Dutch came, I was always kind of like hinting like it would be really cool if she was that cool. If she was that smart to actually
Yeah.
go for like the nice smart guy, and not be like so obvious, where it's like, oh, the pretty girl likes like the rebel cute guy or the rebel cute
Right.
cop.
Right.
Like I never wanted that. So I was always, even when I wasn't supposed to flirt with him, I was always kind of throwing that like take in there. And sometimes that would end up on the show, and
Yeah.
sometimes it wouldn't. Like sometimes they would tell me, okay, you got to tone it down. Why are you flirting with him? Like there's nothing on this page that says you have to be flirting
That's
with him.
great.
So a lot of the time it was me personally wanting that to happen, and also me as an actor going like, well, the more interesting take would be for her to flirt with him, even when she's not supposed to be, like, or just to give him a little bit of like hope. And I think, and I think he also played off of that, and it made his character kind of cool too. So like, I don't know who started it first, because I'm not, again, I'm not going to take credit for that. I mean, he may have been flirting with Tina, and they may have told him like, hey, stop flirting with her or whatever, and then that might have like worked, and it might have been like cool, and some of those takes
Hold on. Let me
made the
make sure I got
story.
this correct. You're saying that they didn't write that into the
I
paper. That was
mean,
just you guys.
I don't remember it being like, they might
A big
have,
deal.
but I don't remember them trying to make a big deal out of it. I mean,
Okay.
it might have been written in there, but very
Yeah.
subtle, and very a la, let's see if this works. Let's see if
Sure.
people kind of like this, Um, and again, because I don't want to take credit for that, but I
Yeah.
remember if it was written on the page, I ran with it.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
toned me down, and so that's probably, more likely what happened. Again, this was more than 10 years ago, so but I
Right.
remember
Right.
being
Yeah.
very happy that could be a possibility, and I would have loved for that to happen. Of course,
It would have been great.
the good looking, like I said, the good
Yeah.
looking bad boy cop came
Yeah.
along and effed it up. I was pissed, man. I was pissed about it. I was like, who cares if he's good looking? You know, who
Yeah.
cares if he's gonna be, you know, Hawaii 5-0 in like 10 years?
I remember watching and just thinking, like, the more that you would have your character flirt with Dutch, I remember just watching and thinking, what? Like, really?
Yeah, because at the time you did like now it's like normal, right? Now geeks rule the
Yeah.
world and they
Yeah,
have the
right, right.
flyest chicks, right? But like back then it was a thing, you know. It wasn't like
Yeah.
a normal thing that you would see. And so I thought like how cool, like yeah, like it's one of the reasons why not to talk about another show, but like it's one of the reasons why I loved Harold and Kumar so much, the Harold and Kumar movies, is
Yeah.
because you had never seen like an Asian dude get like the hot Latin chick. Like that was so taboo. It was so
Yeah.
unheard of. You never really saw an Asian guy be like a sex symbol. You know, it
Yeah.
wasn't even thought of, which was a shame. I mean, obviously now it's like they're super hot everywhere, but it's like back then it was something that was like not even thought of in Hollywood. And so when we got that script, I was just like, oh my God, I have to do this. This has to be. It's one of the only time, like on the Shield, on Harold and Kumar, was really one of the few times where I was so glad I was pretty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was like, this works. Like I can be pretty and be like proud of it, and it's cool. It's not just like, oh well, she's pretty, you know, whatever. No, like this is
Right. Yeah.
cool. You know, this works for this character. So anyway, yeah, I was very happy to flirt with Dutch, and I wished I would have went a little further. It would have been really cool to see. For me, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a scandal. I was eating it up every second y'all did it. I
It
thought it
was a
was
scandal.
fantastic. This is kind of a cookie cutter question, but I think it's important. What is your biggest takeaway from working on the Shield?
Oh gosh, I learned so many lessons, so many great things about being on the Shield. Shield is one of those shows that really was like a dream come true for me. Like, you know, I met so many actors, and I've met them and still meeting them that are like, damn, you're so lucky you were on that show, or that I always wanted to be on that show. Not to be afraid. Like, if you don't ask, you don't get. Like, that's really, I know that sounds really corny and cliche, but like The Shield really was one of those shows where like I truly learned that is true. Like, had I not asked for that audition and demanded that I at least get a chance, had I not
Yeah.
asked, you know, I would have never been on the show. And had I not asked for things when I was on the show, I wouldn't have gotten them. If I wouldn't have opened my mouth, none of them would have really saw like my full potential, you know?
Sure.
So to me, it's like if you don't ask, you don't get. And again, a set can be completely male driven and be completely safe for a woman to work in. And it was really
Yeah.
one of those things that I know there's a lot of awful things that, you know, have happened since then, and a lot of things on the news now about, you know, women in
Sure.
Hollywood. But for me,
Mm-hmm.
The Shield was one of those experiences that was nothing but positive and love and very safe for me to work in, even though it was completely male driven. So I really commend all those men on the show. Like, again, from the producers to the writers to the creators of the show, it's got to be a testament from the top down. So it
Yeah.
probably starts with Sean Ryan. So I have to say, you know, he's a family man, and I know he, you know, adores his
Yeah.
wife and is very respectful towards women, although he wrote a show that was like crazy.
Yeah.
But again, as far as like, I mean, and I had very vulnerable moments on the show where I could have felt really, really horrible about it. And it was nothing but love, and it was very safe. And it was really, really, again, a learning experience for me that was very positive. Like, everything after The Shield was really cool for me. Like,
Yeah.
I was invincible. So yeah, my biggest lesson is that if you don't ask, you don't get. and that safety is possible even in the most craziest of situations, or even in the most horrendous of topics. So that the Shield was full of horrendous topics, but I never had heard anything but positivity from the actors. As far as my experience.
This universe isn't technically over. It's there. Vic's still there. Dutch is there. Tina's there. We get emailed just about every week. What are our thoughts in terms of like continuing that story?
Dude, at least a movie, right? Like a movie. They make so many movies, like Breaking Bad's movie, like just came out or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I ask for a movie all the time, but again, I feel okay with asking for stuff like that because I started out as a fan like everybody else.
Sure.
I started out like, just putting on FX and going, what the hell is that? Like, I got to watch this, And so I ask for it constantly because I feel like I'm also part of the fan-based community of the Shield.
Yeah.
I don't blame you guys. Like you said, there's a lot of people that are still alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get one of the few happy endings in the show. So the question is, where do you think she would be 10 years on, Tina, in that universe? And would you be interested in playing her again?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully she made detective, right? Like finally passed her exam and like,
right.
I mean, I would hope that she would still be like a really amazing detective or undercover in her hood somewhere. I don't know. I mean, I would love to do something like that. I think there's a lot of people that are still interested. I don't know. It's up to you guys. The public has a lot of power. Fans have a lot of power. I mean, Netflix, for example, like I'm on a show right now on my block, and the only reason we got a season 2 or a season 3 is because the fans asked for it. I'm completely convinced. Social media helps a lot, and fans asking, and there's power in numbers, and that's all Netflix cares about, and I'm sure FX would care about like numbers.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Course.
I mean, but everybody's very busy. Walton is super busy and very successful, and Sean is doing his other show with Kenny, and like obviously Michael Chiklis is doing Coyote on Paramount. So everybody's really busy, but I don't see why a movie couldn't be done. A movie would be really cool, I think. Something.
I'm just trying to add your name to that list of people I've got who are saying they'd be interested, so I can bring it to Sean at the end.
God bless you. That was, he knows my feelings. I think I email him about once a year about that. But I think that would be really cool. The only thing that goes against that is their fear of messing up one of TV's most like renowned endings, right, to a show, right? Because like, for example, like like the biggest, I don't know, I guess the biggest flop, or I don't know, that people debate about it, but like I was again a Sopranos fan, and people hated the ending, right? And so depending on who you talk to, they're like, oh, that ending sucks, and some other people thought it was like brilliant, right? But I've never heard anybody say the Shield's ending sucked. Like it's nothing but like, holy shit, we love that, we loved it. That's the way it should end, And I think it's the only reason why Sean Ryan wouldn't go there is not to mess with that perfect score that he has there. I don't know. It's my feeling.
As strong as a fan as I am, I struggle with that every day too. You think like if you continue that story, you basically step beyond, like you said, what was the perfect finale for that show. So it's a hard.
There's a lot of amazing shows out there with horrible endings. I mean, it's Hollywood is notorious for not knowing how to end shit, and so like it's hard. It's hard for the ego to sort of like, I don't know. I think it would be hard for Sean to sort of like play Russian roulette and be like, all right, let's see if we can end it even better with a movie. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it'd be
I don't
tough.
know.
Where can we find you now? Because I know that you're always active on social media at Paula Garcés 1, but where can we find you on our screens?
Okay, so I'm on a show called On My Block on Netflix. Please, please, please watch the third season. And if you haven't seen the first or second season, you can stream them on Netflix now. I'm always around on my social media. I'm very active on Instagram, so you guys can check me out on the real Paula Garces. And I actually created and co-created and I'm producing my own video game. So if you guys can
Yeah,
stay
I'm excited
tuned,
about that.
yes, Aluna Sentinel of the Shards. That comes out second week in April on almost all platforms. So Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Steam, Xbox, you name it. Aluna's going to be available there. And it's a comic book that's been around for a little while. We have 8 books out. So please check it out at alunagame.com. On all my social media, you can. I'm always dropping hints about what I'm doing. That's it. I mean, that's pretty much what I have. If people can support On My Block, that's really cool. It's something that I'm passionate about. Last season, well, this third season that's about to drop in March, I got to shadow a director, and so I have the director's bug. And so I'm hoping that if we get a season 4, I can get a shot at one of the episodes and direct one of the episodes. So just being really selfish, if everyone can say how brilliant it is and we do get a season 4, I may get to direct my first episode ever after being 30 years in the business.
That'll be exciting.
That would be very exciting.
Yeah,
Very
I appreciate
exciting.
you doing this. Thank you for coming on.
This was so much fun going down memory lane. The Shield is awesome. I'm so happy that people are still interested and that people are still like discovering it for the first time.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Thank you. This was lovely. A lot of fun. Thank you so much.